Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Eden of Astrological.com. Welcome back to the channel, friends. Hope you guys had a good weekend and are doing well out there. Today is Mantic Monday, episode 29. We'll be taking a look at a Mars square Pluto aspect that is setting itself up this week for us, and maybe some themes that go along with that, or narratives that may be reflective of that kind of aspect as it may present itself in various ways. We'll get into 4 or 5 of these, and we'll take a look at the timing of this particular aspect that is coming through the week for us. Now, this is just one of the things that is happening astrologically for us, but I don't want to overload the video with too much information so that it remains digestible for everyone. But we are having a Mercury cazimi on Friday this week as well. So you could just keep that in mind if you practice astrology and you sort of are familiar with Mercury cazimis, Mercury being in its own domicile right now, being sheltered from the harsh rays of the sun and so on and so forth. And that may deepen your understanding of a Mars squared Pluto that is also happening alongside of a Mercury cazimi this week. So think maybe heightened mental processes that are unfolding or something like that. But anyway, today we're just going to take a look at the Mars squared Pluto aspect that comes along for us this week. And that's because, you know, Mars squared Pluto's aspects tend to pack quite a punch. Not always. Mars squared Pluto doesn't always mean that everything will devolve into some, you know, Mad Max scenario where things fall apart and there is violence all around you or anything like that. But they can definitely be indicative of repressed, like almost volcanic earthquake-like energy that really serves to release things buried quite deep, and then they can pack that punch because we're talking about Mars as a warrior archetype that will fight for what it wants, will fight for its independence, freedom, individualism, and so on and so forth. So we're going to take a look at some narratives that may go along with this, and we'll also talk about the timing here. Now, I had fun coming up with the things to talk about today because it seemed like there was almost an endless list. We're talking about Mars being in Taurus, which is a sign ancient astrologers talked about Mars specifically as being in a place that is out of place for Mars, naturally speaking, or was called like a Mars being in the sign of its detriment. And you could sort of think of it as Mars not being in a sign that is very like his nature. In fact, it's almost opposite to his natural behaviors. So that makes it quite interesting as an interpretation. We could just talk about Mars in Taurus because this is a new situation where Mars has moved into this sign, and that could be a video all on its own that would be really interesting to talk about. But then this becomes one of those things where, because Pluto is touching Mars as Mars enters this sign, it's like, okay, we know that there's something quite potent. We know that there is intensity, deepness, power, almost like a nuclear force that is giving Mars in Taurus a lot more power than would normally maybe be expected. So that's the sign, that's the omen that there's something really, really volcanic or deep or powerful coming up from the depths of, you know, the underworld that may serve to release trapped energy that can keep things humming along in a healthy way, or can be quite destructive if it isn't mediated, you know. So that is kind of interesting. And of course, Pluto in Aquarius is also very interesting. None of us have lived to experience Pluto in this sign because Pluto moves so slowly. And we're still getting used to what Pluto in Aquarius even represents, what it means, what it signifies, what it feels like energetically. Aquarius is in and of itself an incredibly interesting sign. It stands in opposition to the sun's temple of Leo. It's a Saturn-ruled sign that usually denotes both tradition and outsiderness. So there's a lot of ways you could take a Mars square Pluto aspect, um, and especially in these very interesting signs that it is happening within. Not only that, but one last thing, and then we'll jump into the timing of this. The other thing that was kind of cool to think about is that even though Mars enters Taurus on Sunday, and then is walking through that square, which we give about 3 degrees after the exact alignment perfects, which is sometime around the end of this week. Even though we're only talking about a week-long transit or so, we'll get maybe, I don't know, 9, 10, maybe 11, probably not 11, but 9 or 10 more Mars square Pluto aspects with Mars, every couple of years circling around back to Taurus and Pluto moving slowly through Aquarius and then forming that square again. So even though today we're really looking at maybe more short-term transit energies, I also wanted to include some food for thought as it pertains to what does it mean that we're going to experience Pluto in Aquarius for 20 years, and that, Pluto takes 2 years to go around the zodiac. So every couple of years, we'll experience this formation again between these two planets. And so there's this kind of almost long-term, slow evolving process that we're getting to experience for the first time this time, but then we have maybe 8 or 9 more times like this. So I also wanted to talk about a few narratives that may present themselves that may be about very long-term kinds of narratives that are serving to slowly evolve or change specific things about our lives or our society as a collective. So that is what we're going to take a look at today. Okay, let's pull up the real-time clock and talk about the timing before we get into some of this. Okay, so we have the real-time clock. I always have it set to London just because that's centrally located for everybody. But last Sunday, June the 9th, 2024, Mars enters Taurus and moves into a sign that is opposite to one of Mars's temples, namely Scorpio, across the way here. So now Mars is in the sign of its detriment or contrariety, or however you want to say it. Mars is in a Venus sign, and Mars and Venus, although they're archetypally connected as lovers, Mars in Taurus can be like a bull in a china shop, is usually how people put it. We're talking about Mars as a planet that owns a nature of a warrior, of a individualist, right? It is now in a sign that is, it's the domicile lord is Venus, a planet that is much more graceful, articulate, harmonious at times, or likes to pull things together in harmony, likes to maybe think about the aesthetics or beauty of something. And Mars often just doesn't care about those things. Although Mars can, and Mars will in this sign. But there is kind of a Mars out of place or out of sorts a bit in the sign of Taurus. So that energy is something we're getting used to just in and of itself. Of course, Uranus is there in Taurus as well, giving a little bit more of that Wile E. Coyote kind of feel to Mars, I suspect. But as we roll the real-time clock forward, let me go ahead and put on my label too. Okay, so here's Mars moving into Taurus last Sunday. But as we roll the real-time clock forward, just to Tuesday, we get the square perfecting between Mars and Pluto. So this is one thing that's interesting is we don't have a lot of time to get used to Mars in Taurus before there's this intensity. There's the perfection of the square right off the bat early on in the week on Tuesday. And then as the week goes on, we also get a Mercury cazimi on Friday. But as the week goes on here, Mars slowly separates out of that engagement range to Pluto, but it takes about, okay, here's Friday. Here's the Mercury Sun cazimi up here in Gemini. Venus is still pretty close. But as the week goes on, it takes until I think around maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday, that this energy is beginning to calm back down again, and um, the intensity maybe slips away or wears off by that point. So that is the timing of this Mars-Pluto aspect. But again, we also have this Mercury-Cazimi, which is going to be heightening certain things, right? Especially any kind of mental processes that we're going through or ideas that are coming along. That is also something that's really interesting. But let's get into the narratives you may notice as it relates to Mars square Pluto. Okay, first of all, we have Wooly Bully. I'm sure everybody is familiar with this song. Even people in younger generations may have heard this song on the oldie station or whatever. But Wooly Bully. Now, initially, I just thought about Mars as being kind of this bull in the china shop energy, which is one of the more common ways you would interpret a Mars square Pluto. It's just kind of a kind of crazy energy that is kicking itself up and comes along with a lot of power or dynamic energy that is having the ability to move things around in a tangible way, build things, break things. You you get the feeling of like maybe what's that thing where you have to like if you're going to renovate, you have to kind of break the walls down first, and so there's the demolition. That's the word I'm thinking about. You get kind of that bull in the china shop image in your head where there's Mars coming in and maybe doing demolition that is vital to something that comes next. Like doing a remodel. First, you have to get rid of the old thing, right? But because we're talking about Aquarius, we're also talking about maybe things that are informing Mars that are outsider or somehow against the narrative, like the status quo. We get that, of course, because in the zodiac, Aquarius stands in opposition to the sun sign, and the sun tends to represent the hegemony or the kingdom or the king, and from which all central edicts and laws and social fashions come. So Aquarius can be outsider, it can be rebellious, it can be countercurrent, it can go against the narrative. It can sort of have that progressivism that is kind of rejecting the status quo and whatnot. So Wooly Bully, I looked up the meaning of this song just out of instinct, and it turned out to have an incredible like similar meaning as Mars in Taurus squaring Pluto in Aquarius. I won't belabor it too much, but if you look up this song, if you're interested in this, this song is getting at such narratives as unusual things that take you out of your comfort zone, and you have to be bold and experimental. But of course, it might be there might be some destruction that comes along with it, or some disruption, or something like that. So it's kind of like I think one of the articles I read was talking about if you don't know how to dance, you need to be bold and get out there on the dance floor and step on some toes, but put yourself out there in a way that you wouldn't normally, or in a way that is sort of countercurrent, or it could even be doing a dance that nobody else knows how to do, and you're out there on the dance floor, doing it up and not really caring. And some people might think that that is a scandal, but it also may be very liberating. It may feel like there's a streak of independence or autonomy that is all yours. And even though it is sort of outsider or rebellious, or it goes against the narrative somehow, it has this, it gives you a certain sense of like vitality that is really empowering. So you get both of these kind of things with Aquarius and Taurus coming together. You get Pluto and Aquarius representing things that are coming from maybe some deep counterculture narratives. And then you get Mars in the sign of its detriment, not being in a sign that it shares a nature with, being almost like a a person in a foreign country that is just somehow not in its own place. So you get these out of place kind of narratives that are bold. They have that Marsy feel to them of independence, going against the grain, going against what's the norm or the accepted, maybe stepping on toes, hurting feelings. This is all part of what I think maybe the most basic way you can interpret Mars going through a square to Pluto from Taurus when Mars is in the sign of its detriment. Let me look at my notes here so I'm not leaving anything out. Wooly bully and a bull on steroids. Yeah, that's another part of it. With Pluto empowering Mars, you also get that kind of a bull that feels like it's like the bull is already really energetic. Have you guys ever known anybody that is a Sun Taurus? I've known a few, and the one thing that I would say I've noticed about all Sun Taurus people is they have a lot of energy. They have a lot of stamina. You know, Taurus, that springtime sign, has a lot of virility to it. And the people that I've known that are Sun Taurus signs, it's like they can just go night and day without sleep. I knew one person that I wondered when he slept. He worked 3 jobs. He dated 10 women, and he hung out after work at the bar all night long with friends. And it's like, bro, when do you sleep? You know. But I've known a few Taurus Sun people like that. So imagine now you have Mars as a planet that is a planet generally associated with energy, with action, with doing stuff in this very in this sign that has a lot of virility to it, a lot of energy, a lot of that springtime, the energy of like a toddler that just never wears down, you know. And then here comes along Pluto. Pluto is often associated with nuclear power because Pluto was first discovered during the advent of the nuclear age, when scientists were learning to work with nuclear energy. So because of that discovery timing association, Pluto tends to, plutonium, the element that was named because of this whole thing with nuclear energy and so on and so forth. So you get this association again with power, energy. So one of the images that I think is very readily available for this particular aspect in these particular signs is you get that kind of bull on steroids. You get the bull that's been kicked in the nuts. You know, this energy is it's heightened for doing. It's gonna, I feel like it's gonna give us all a kick in the rump that we'll just be doing stuff, especially as it may pertain to unique modes of action or counter current kinds of things, but also things that may relate to our personal stamina, beauty, fertility, prosperity, those Tauranian kind of things that we generally see. Example, like things like exercise or IVF fertility treatments, or anything that enhances sex drive or attractiveness, even foods like aphrodisiac foods, or such things as like cosmic surgery, anything like that. You get some of these themes that I think are going along with this woolly bully narrative that may be appearing, but all of that being very energetic at the same time. Another image I thought of is like drinking a bunch of Red Bull and then driving yourself to do some CrossFit exercise, you know, that real extreme intensity that comes along with activity or virility or exercise or something like that. This energy can be used, of course, constructively. It can be used to build things, or it can express as a ruthless disregard to achieve results. That is the shadow side of this that we have to all watch out for. And there's no judgment from me. I think any one of us could easily take this energy and use it constructively, or run with it in a way that is a bit ruthless at times, or you get maybe manipulation that comes along, like something like wanting a job promotion and you're competing with somebody else, and maybe maybe there's the temptation to do something unscrupulous or hidden, or stab somebody in the back, metaphorically speaking, so that you get the permission. Sort of stepping on people to sort of get what you want is part of the shadow side of this that could come along. So, but anyway, that bull in the china shop, that woolly bully, unique outsider energy, I think is one of the biggest ways we'll see this show up for us this week, or for some of us at least. Okay, narrative that you may notice, number 2, is challenge or frustration of things out of place. Again, Aquarius is a sign that often people with strong Aquarian placements in their chart natally, they just sort of go against the grain. We see that again because Aquarius sits opposite to the sun's temple of Leo, the sun representing the central organizing principle of things. So Aquarius is like that image of Bob Marley, chanting down Babylon, sort of going against the authorities, if you will. Kate and I have been watching this series called Married at First Sight. I have in my birth chart, I have Venus and Mars in the sign of Scorpio in my first house, which has always reflected a kind of interest that I have in social dynamics. I'm always very curious about people. One reason why I like to do readings for people. But specifically, I am interested in intersexual dynamics, the dynamics between men and women, and how those two things get along. And so even though it admittedly isn't very masculine, generally men don't watch these reality kind of love TV series shows like this. I find them fascinating because I like to see these dynamics play out. So if you've heard of this one, it's on Netflix, Married at First Sight, and they have a new season, and we've been watching it. And there's this guy, Mitch. I don't know if he is an Aquarius or if he has strong Aquarius placements, but man, oh man, this guy is like Aquarius to the hilt by archetype. So if you're interested in my take on Aquarian archetypes, and you have Netflix, check this out. He's Mitch. You'll notice it. Everybody notices it, but Aquarius that really outside of the box, countercurrent, progressive, going against the grain, saying things at the wrong time all the time, marching to the beat of your own drum. That Aquarian kind of energy, touching Mars, a planet that is now out of Aries, a sign that it was at home in a sign that is opposite to one of its natural temples. You get that same theme of like things being out of place. And Mars generally denotes frustration or challenge or difficulty or anger or things like that we have to contend with. So I imagine that maybe one of the narratives you might notice that comes up for you over the next week is some kind of challenge or frustration, something about a thing feeling out of place, maybe you feeling out of place, maybe a situation not feeling like it fits all the way or something like that. And so broadly speaking, the frustration that comes up along with that, and maybe it feels as though you need to be challenging the status quo or going against the popular narrative or stepping out somehow, but it might be in a way that is more, I don't want to say destructive, but definitely like, I've got to do it, if people can't accept it or it makes them angry, it might make me angry that they're angry that they won't accept what I'm trying to do, or it's something like that. It's like, it's not going to shy away from conflicts, arguments, fights and things like that. If need be, it will stand its ground. It will be very powerful. And I think that is going to serve to release some pent up energies, the energy that has been buried. If there are things that you've been frustrated about, that you've been kind of holding down inside for a while, Pluto tends to represent those cathartic releases of energy that makes going forward return to a place of vitality, freshness, newness, and health. So it's like, if there's an issue between you and your partner that hasn't been put on the table and completely resolved, this may be a week where it's finally time to bring everything out of the closet, set it on the table and say, this is what I'm working with. And you have to accept it if you want to have me be healthy. If you love me and care about me and want me to be healthy, I can't keep bottling this down. Now, it doesn't mean you have to blame somebody else for that energy that you have been bottling down, but it at least this transit will serve to get things out in the open that allows it to be processed or dealt with, and maybe in a way that down the road everybody is much better off, because there's truth there's understanding, all things like that. But those processes are usually pretty uncomfortable and can destroy the vibes for a while. So for some of us that have things like that, this may be a week where we just end up doing that work with ourselves or with other people or something like that. So that is narrative number 2 that I could see with this particular transit. 3, heightened creative or destructive libido. This one's pretty simple. We're talking about Mars, a planet that literally, the glyph of the planet is literally the male genitalia that is standing erect. Use your imagination for that if you've never heard that before. And it's in Venus's temple, the sign of love and attraction and virility. So there is obviously, with this aspect, there's going to be a lot of heightened libido. Now, of course, that will translate into physical, sexual attractiveness, horniness, libido, sex drive. All of those things may, be here to spice up your sex life or spice up a desire or something like that. More desire being readily available for you, which may serve to represent, like, I have friends that would like to have more children, things like that. This may be a week where you get on it, stuff like that. Of course, with Pluto touching Mars, it gives it that atomic energy, that power or that empowerment that is coming from the deep. Pluto, a planet that represents the underworld, right? Mythologically, a planet that connects with the richness or the fertility of the earth, right? We put the seeds in the earth, and somehow miraculously, those seeds grow into food. That creative energy is like, wow. In the Druid cards that I had, I remember there were these dragon cards, and I kind of got into learning about what dragons could mean symbolically. And it has a lot to do with this, because that creative energy can always be used to create, or it can be used to destroy. And so you get kind of this powerful energy that is, it's a neutral energy, and it's very powerful. It tends to create, but it also tends to destroy. Mars, being a planet, you don't know what it's going to do. It could be very constructive at times, but it also can serve to destroy something. It is a planet in ancient astrology that was one of the malefic planets that could represent things that are cutting away, things that are being killed. It represented the death. It's exalted in the sign of Capricorn, the time of year where life in the world is at its lowest, and so death is heightened or exalted at that time. So you could see this very powerful underworldly energy that is where things are born out of. Like, it's the energy that creates new life, but uh, new life and the creation of new life is always intrinsically related to uh, the flip side, the death or the plowing under, the releasing. So these are very powerful themes or narratives that may be coming along right now for us, where there's a strong connection to um, needing to destroy or um, uh, going through the demolition before something can be birthed or something like that, or needing to tap into that energy to physically create something is very strong, I think, right now. So that is number 3. Number 4 is going to be, this is where I think the first 3 are serving to describe this week's immediate transit energy. Number 4 and number 5 here. Yeah, I've got 2 more. Number 4 and number 5 are going to be us getting into, well, what does it mean, broadly speaking, that Pluto is in Aquarius? And there could be some bigger social things or long-term things that this could be indicating. So number 4 is bigger social ideas trickling down. And what I mean by that is simply that we're always a part of a collective, and there is this big collective atmosphere. You think about almost like the sky as a whole, and you look up and you see the weather, and it's this big weather system. Aquarius, where Pluto is, this very slow moving planet that is connected with transformation or evolution, moving very slowly through this mental, airy sign that is related to society or humanity. I wonder about how the mental collective weather that we are all in, that we don't notice, right? It's like watching a child grow, and because you see them every single day, you don't notice how they're growing. Whereas maybe grandma and grandpa comes over and it's like, wow, you've gotten big, you've gotten strong. So this slow, not so obvious ways that we're all participating in a collective, in collective ideas or collective thoughts or ideologies or beliefs or things like that. Like, for instance, smartphones. It wasn't all that long ago, a couple of decades now, I think, where if you made a phone call, it was from your house with the phone on your wall. It is not the world we're living in now. Now everybody has these incredible miniature computers. That's a very Aquarian example of Pluto and Aquarius, even though it happened, of course, before Pluto was in Aquarius. But this way in which we all participate in this collective mental sphere of ideas or beliefs or understanding, how does that trickle down to us on the individual level? And the image I got was this. It's like, have you guys ever seen one of those really, really, really big bulldozers or earth movers? Sometimes you see them on the trailers as they're being transported down the road. Some of these are enormous, right? They're massive. And I'll never forget the time that I needed some excavation work done on my property. And so I hired an excavator, and he came over with a D9. This thing is one of the biggest earth movers. I don't know if it's the ones they use for highways like that big, but this thing is huge. It's gigantic. But the image that I got was like Taurus, right? This earth sign, this sign that tends to be about how we are moving or forming or growing tangible things in our life. Those earthly kinds of things that we, the ways that we use earth. How are we using wood? How are we using food? How are we using tangible, valuable things? All those earthy kinds of things. I get this picture of Pluto squaring Mars, and Mars, this energy being like this D9 bulldozer that is somehow excavating something in your life right now that has a tangible reality to it, things that are being built or changed or shaped somehow in a tangible earthly way. But it takes the pilot or the operator sitting in the chair within this big giant machine, and based on what he thinks, his imagination, his creativity, what he's been taught, or he could be a she, right? But the person that is operating this big D9 bulldozer that is earth moving, what are the ideas or the information or the learned social things that have an impact that cause that trickle down effect of you using that mental process to, operate the controls, and then the controls are connected to this massive, powerful thing that can shape. That is number 4. And I'm sorry if that's a little bit abstract, but it's not just the machine that is shaping, it's our ideas. It's our collective knowledge or place in the collective soup or the atmosphere of the culture or the or society writ large, right? So yeah, things like AI as a low-hanging fruit, for example. It's not here quite yet, but it's pretty close. Well, it is. I mean, it is here, but it's not to the point where everybody is using it like a smartphone every day. But it will be, right? And how does that shape? How does that move the earth around in our lives? Things like that. Again, Pluto will cycle back around to Taurus every couple of years and make this square. I'm sorry, Mars will cycle through the zodiac every couple of years and enter Taurus, making that square to Pluto. So this is the first one out of 8 or 9 times that we get to experience this, that may give us a first little taste or tidbit of this slow progress of how things are transformed in this very tangible way based on ideas, even things like social constructs that we are participating in, and so on and so forth, which may, of course, relate to everything from technology to medicine to everything, right? But a little bit harder to see how that transforms us day by day, a lot like a child that we see every day that we don't always notice the different stages of growth. But it's like all of a sudden you look at your child and you go, wow, this child has gotten strong, independent. They are capable. That Mars and Taurus kind of, I can do it. I have the power. I'm very empowered to do something. But it's based on something that may be ideological. The machine still needs the operator that is operating the controls of the machine by way of the imagination that is happening in the mind of the operator. So that is number 4. Number 5 is even perhaps a little one level down deeper. Bigger questions on independence versus agreeableness, accord, harmony, relationships, and love in this time specifically. So this one is about something even broader, because what does it mean that, let's pull up the real-time clock one more time, just so we get a picture of the zodiac here. This, and I'm not even going to posit what I think that this means. I'm just going to put this out there as an interesting question. And if anybody has any ideas how to interpret this, I would love to hear your guys' take on this. But okay, let me just move. Let me move Aries and Taurus up to the top of the sky here. And let's take out some planets just to make it more simple. Uh, okay, there we go. All right. What does it mean that you have the sign Aries and Taurus being neighbors right next together? Aries being a Mars ruled sign, Venus and Taurus being a Venus ruled sign. And what does it mean that whenever planets enter Taurus, they come out of this Marsy sign into a Venus sign and they make squares with Pluto? For me, there's some question here about um, independence, individuality, ego, the things that define us, the ways in which we draw the lines in the sand and say, these are my boundaries, these are my borders. This is what I'll fight for as an individual. This is how I show up in the world as the warrior. That Aries Mars kind of archetype seems to be having a difficult time moving into Venus's temple, as per indicated by the square that will be made back to Pluto every time this happens. And not just Mars, anytime any planet moves into Taurus right now, we get this interesting concept of immediate squares back to Pluto. And what does that mean? So, what is Venus? Venus's sign of Taurus. What is on a broader level? What could that be representing? Well, we know Taurus is the exaltation place of the moon relating to the sublunary sphere of material things, like things that are needed for survival, like food, but sustenance, things that provide a good life, like money or wealth or value, things that we take pleasure in, like entertainment or romance, things that are creative, like the springtime going back into abundance out of the winter time. Any number of things, right? These are these very Tauranian Venus archetypal creative things that are also represented by Venus's ability to be more concerned with harmony, with bringing things together and harmonizing things and making attraction between two people happen, or making life spring forth back into abundance or something like that. So Venus's sign is much less independent. It's much less concerned with itself and what it's doing on its own. And we get this interesting transition where, what does it mean right now that we have this planet hanging out in this very societal collective sign like Aquarius that represents something deep and powerful that is hanging out in the underworld, and planets enter Taurus and come out of this very independent Aries sign, this Mars sign, and move into this more collective, socially harmonious place, or a place that it is about being more agreeable or something like that. And it seems to me that what this is speaking to is that in our time right now, there are challenges around being individuals that have to work together or agree together or something like that. So my interpretation is that this may be representing a time where it's more challenging to be individuals that have to work together to create peace or harmony or love, or people like, again, this show that I've been watching, this series, Married at First Sight. You see all of these young people. Well, I guess they're not that young, some of them, but you see all these people that are looking for love and they want love, but they're all used to being on their own or having their own lives and being the captains of their own ships. And when these very individualistic people come together, and I'm not knocking them, I think this is a sign of the times. Everybody is almost like this. When we come together right now, we're so used to being individuals. It's quite difficult, or let's say it's more difficult than perhaps it used to be in times past, for us to know or understand, how do we come together? How do we ultimately have love, have relationships, all of those things? I think that this square architecture that is set up by Pluto and Aquarius, um, in a much bigger, broader way, um, represents planets entering Taurus out of Aries and immediately making this square. I think that that is getting at that we simply live in a time where there are challenges in understanding how to be uh, autonomous or independent, or individuals, or self-defined, or self-interested, that clash with how we ultimately become harmonious, work harmonious together, or become more together. The moon, the exaltation of the moon, where the moon has her exaltation in the sign of Taurus. The moon is very collective. It brings things together. It holds family together and things like that. So there's interesting challenges, I think, with all of these ideas. So I wonder what you guys think about this, but I did want to point that out, even though this is making the video a little bit longer. Again, we're going to have Mars cycle back around every couple of years and make this square to Pluto. So this is just an interesting first look, and a couple of theories that I wanted to posit and get your guys' take on about some of the deeper implications of what it means to think about Pluto in Aquarius is seriously connected to planets moving into Taurus. There's a relationship there. And I think that Taurus transition clues us into what Aquarius in Pluto is representing. You know, Tauranian things go through pretty intense, deep moments as planets wander into that sign, because they inherently now will always make that square back to Pluto. So very interesting, just food for thought. But anyway, that is what I have for this week, guys. I hope you guys enjoy this. Leave in the comments anything that you liked, or any things that you even disagree with, or anything that you notice, experiences with this transit. I would love to hear all of that. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll be back again with another Mantic Monday video next week, and we'll take a look at some more astrology. Until then, hope you guys have a good one, and take care. Bye for now.